aren't feeling optimistic about the difference being made by some of their leaders. For some countries, though, some areas of concern like security and corruption are actually not as bad as some fear. Pan-African Research Network, Afrobarometer, has done a deep dive to analyse data originally collected on governance by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation to work out why the perception of how the continent is doing is often at odds with what's really happening. Well, for a closer look at their findings, I'm joined now by Joseph Asunka, who's the CEO of Afrobarometer. Joseph, thanks so much for making time to talk us through all of this. So first of all, let's set the scene. Where are the biggest of these gaps between perception and reality when it comes to Africans' view of how the continent's doing?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And first, let me just state up front that the latest report from the Ibrahim Foundation is significant as it underscores the importance of building a governance index from a variety of sources of data. So specifically to respond to your question, I'll respond to your question and make just one remark about why this is important, why I say this is important. First of all, the report does show that there's a big divergence between what citizens are experiencing in terms of safety and security and what is reportedly documented in government official statistics. That's one of the biggest gaps we've seen. So whereas in some countries, there seem to have been improvements according to what official statistics say, when we ask citizens about security and safety, we've seen that there's a gap. People are feeling more anxious about their own security than what official statistics is saying. The other component we've seen some divergence is an economic opportunity. And maybe this is not even surprising because the African rising narrative of the 2010s seem to have dissipated and people are feeling more pain now in terms of the economic opportunity, but also more importantly, people feel that their countries are not heading in the right direction. So there's a sense of pessimism about the economy, especially in countries that are in conflict, like in Ethiopia or Gabon or Guinea, where there's some conflict going on. We see people expressing more pessimism about the future, as well as even their current living conditions. The only indicator where we see citizen views aligning strongly with what official statistics say is on gender equality, which is probably a growing sense that people are more supportive of women in leadership. But the one comment I wanted to make about why these divergences might occur is this, that if I take the example of government spending, say, $10 billion constructing healthcare facilities across the country, that is one level of service provision. But then if these clinics or hospitals do not have the relevant healthcare providers, or they don't have the drugs, when citizens visit these healthcare facilities, what they experience will be different from what government has invested. So even though official statistics might record that government has spent $10 billion in the health sector, what citizens actually experience is that they don't get the drugs and they don't have the doctors or nurses taking care of them. And so when you ask them to rate the government performance in healthcare delivery, they are telling you what they are experiencing and not necessarily what government has invested. And so that raises the question, why these gaps? And that is what makes it important for an index like the Ibrahim Index of African Governance, or any index for that matter, to take into account different sources of data when building these indices.
But besides the researchers who put together reports like this, what else can be done with identifying these mismatches? Why does it matter seeing how the experience of Africa is so Africans are so far away from the ways and numbers in terms of investment that the governments are reporting for investigations like this?
It matters for, a couple of reasons. First of all, when we see these gaps, the question is why? Why do we have these gaps? And that is where you can really develop what we call evidence-based policy making. Because one, it could be that government is investing resources in this area, but it is really not trickling down to affect citizens' lives as we would expect them to. And so governments sitting in the capital city, investing resources and hoping that it will get to citizens. If you see that your citizens are the experiences of your citizens, even as the report shows, for example, security. If you see that what you are investing in security is not really affecting people's lives, and people are reporting that they are afraid or they have concerns about their own security, it should tell government that there must be a blockade somewhere. There's something that is preventing resources from directly impacting citizens. And so these kinds of gaps does help us to do a more detailed analysis of policies that are implemented in ways that allows government to think about creative ways to get resources to actually impact people's lives. Mm-hmm. The second component is that when the Ibrahim Index of African Government or any other governance index for that matter, the practical purpose of these indices is for policy making. And
Joseph?
So building an index that draws from all these data sources then allows us to see some of these gaps, ask ourselves why the gaps, and then what can governments do to ensure that they bridge those gaps.
Joseph Asunka, the CEO of Afrobarometer, thank you so much for breaking down the importance of how linking figures to the bottom line and impact in people's actual lives is so important.